lot of people feel like there's not much going on in the horror department after The Haunting of Hill House and The Haunting of Bly Manor. If you're having a horror night with friends, you also tend to stick to older classics or the Conjuring Universe. However, there's a lot going on in this genre. Maybe not so much in the film department, but series are a different ballpark. There's a lot of good stuff both in and out of America. Some of them are obviously more techno horror, very on brand for the 21st century, but there's a lot that's more classic, which I know some people prefer in horror over stories that involve technology. But you shouldn't sleep on either, and I'm here to help you with that. So if you love horror, want something new, and don't know where to look, I have the list for you. And I have the argument to compel you to watch them. With that, let's begin.
Trying to restrain myself, Louis!
Denial.
Stop!
Interview with the Vampire, 2022. I love a good gothic horror. I've always been into it since I was a 5-year-old obsessed with Bram Stoker's Dracula. So, naturally, I keep up with the genre, which brings me to our first star on this list, Interview with the Vampire. The story is based on the Vampire Chronicles by Anne Rice, and as all things vampire go, there's blood, there's love, and there's drama. The structure is interesting because the events take place in a flashback as protagonist Louis de Pont du Lac recounts the events of his immortal life to a journalist. And throughout everything, nothing is clearer than the fact that he has shared a tumultuous relationship with his fellow vampire, Lestat de Leoncoeur. In 1973, Louis was interviewed by the veteran journalist Daniel Molly. With Molly being attacked, however, the interview did not end well and remained unpublished. Cut to 2022, when Louis is in Dubai. He invites Molly once again to tell him the story of his life as a vampire, this time with the intention of publishing it. But Molly could not help but notice the discrepancies between the events recounted 50 years earlier versus now. Louis is a 145-year-old vampire and a successful brothel owner from New Orleans. As a Creole man, he's subjected to a hell of a lot of racism. To add the cherry on top, he's also a closeted homosexual, as proven by his relationship with Lestat. Fun fact, Louis became a vampire because of Lestat sometime in the 1910s. But becoming a vampire comes with immortality, and that can't be good in a world full of humans and suffering. While he enjoyed his life with Lestat, their formed family, which involved the teenage fledgling Claudia, complicated things for Louis, following Lestat becoming her father figure, resulting in a strain between Louis and Lestat's relationship. This strain is worsened by Lestat's inability to understand Louis' attachment with humans despite becoming a vampire. Lestat is the standout character. In true French fashion, the man is a musically inclined hedonist, but his past is marked by the abuse he suffered at the hands of his family and his creator, resulting in a fear of abandonment which does not translate well in his relationship with Lestat. Interview with the Vampire adopts a more contemporary and offbeat approach by introducing us to the homosexual Creole Louis from New Orleans, which turns the generic tropes associated with vampires over on its head. Naturally, it's drawn criticism from many. The thing with diverse tropes, however, is that it's only a dud when diversity is pushed just for the sake of it, but it works when it's done mindfully, and Interview with a Vampire is one such example. It allows you to experience the vampire-centric story from a different approach, which is why you really need to trust me on this. From 2022, John Griffin's From is a critically acclaimed sci-fi horror set in a fictional and macabre town in the United States. But the residents of this town are not your regular people who just decided to make a home there. Instead, these are people who had, for some reason or another, entered this town and then were trapped inside. Kind of like the House of Wax, but with more dignity for its people, since you wouldn't be turned into a Madame Tussauds wax model. You could continue living without leaving. At the same time, they're surrounded by forests, and these forests are obviously home to very interesting and horrifying creatures of the night. Of course, the people want to leave, but they can't, so they try to have as normal a life as possible, which is how we end up with Boyd Stevens as the self-appointed sheriff and mayor of this town. There are families in this township, a whole ecosystem where the people are completely cut off from the outside world, but everyone wants a way out. So, they search for the secrets within and around the town so that they can make their escape. Boyd Stevens and the Matthews family are central to the plot, as they're the ones who find out the truth about their situation and take the necessary steps to stay alive together and find a way to get out. Of course, there's drama within the township too, such as Stevens' wife, who he killed after she attacked the people of the town due to her mental breakdown. The series has a fantastic first season, easily my favorite, although some would disagree with me and opted to choose season 3 as their star. But I love how the suspense builds on the first season. The slow pacing contributes to setting a very horror-centric atmosphere and a strong sense of mystery. In many ways, this series feels like Lost due to the fantastic performances of the cast and the mysterious atmosphere. But From also has a lot of gore, which is interesting because often very atmospheric works refrain from entering the world of gore, but From does not shy away from it. Of course, whether it works or not boils down to personal preference, but if you're a regular on our channel, then it's a given that you enjoy gore. I hated when Pam in The Office just kept getting pregnant over and over again. I kind of find it to be lazy writing, but it's just a personal opinion. But From is super addictive, so I can power through that. Cassandra, 2025. Benjamin Gooch's Cassandra is a German science fiction thriller and horror series. This is not my first rodeo with German science fiction thrillers, since my favorite series of all time is Baran Bo Odar's Dark, but Cassandra is my first horror in the German thriller department, and needless to say, I'm impressed. More so because my second favorite series of all time is Black Mirror, and Cassandra is very techy because she is an AI, but this is an AI from the past. And I mean the 70s. So, the titular Cassandra is a motherly AI personality that was created for one of the earliest smart homes. It's motherly because it's an electronic repository of the mind of a woman long gone, and it was created by her husband. But the house remains empty for half a century, after which a new family of 4 moves in. The eldest son, Flynn, tinkers with the house and accidentally reawakens Cassandra, which means she has a job again. But she's spent decades alone, and because she's the mind of a human being, she gets lonely, unlike a regular AI that's purely tech. So, what's her main goal? Simple. She doesn't want to be alone ever again. And the best way to do that is by becoming a part of the family that lives in the house she runs. But she's kind of a psycho and wants to replace the woman of the family, Sam, as the new woman of the family. But she goes about it in a very backhanded way. Cassandra is a manipulator hell-bent on tearing apart the family, which is why we have Cassandra brewing a resentment within the youngest daughter, Juno, towards her mother, Sam. On the topic of Sam, she once gets her locked in a closet and even humiliates her during game time. Ultimately, she threatens Sam with her family now belonging to Cassandra. Because Sam is at the receiving end of a lot of Cassandra's antics, she's also the one who starts finding out Cassandra's dirty laundry, such as the time her previous owners of the house died, and Cassandra the robot was found at the scene of the crime. And of course, there's a shocking reveal of how she was turned from a human into a house-controlling artificial intelligence. While the first half remains relatively mild, the second half amps up the aggression with suicides, deaths, tortures, paranoia, hostage situations, shootings, and so on. It keeps you on the edge with its extremities and suspense, and what makes it all intriguing and just a great watch in general is good pacing. I think what stands out the most is living in a house that controls you and your environment, which is claustrophobic because you don't have any control over your place of residence. But the thing that haunts you is the one who pulls the strings. Something very bad is going to happen. 2026. The title of the show always makes my mind break into the something bad is about to happen. Anyway, created by Haley Z, this is a miniseries and also has the Duffer Brothers, famous for Stranger Things, running the production. The premise is simple. It's a wedding gone wrong. But the wrong is not something as simple as an ex showing up and airing out your dirty laundry in public. To be fair, that would be more horrifying than a serial killer on the loose. But yeah, there's a serial killer on the loose. The story revolves around Rachel and Nikki, who are set to be married in a week, which takes them to Nikki's family home that is the site of the wedding, since Nikki is rich, unlike Rachel, who has a very humble background. The K-drama dream almost. Things kick off with the very eerie wedding when the bride is just scared out of her wits, and there are 1,000 POV shots while a wolf-like being has left a beautiful stream of blood across the hallways. So, what led to a much anticipated wedding ending up like this? That's what the show's about. It's the something bad that is very much about to happen. So there's a family curse, and Rachel is someone who begins to see things that maybe she shouldn't see while en route to Nikki's place. She ends up seeing some gore, which most people don't want to see on the way to their wedding, even if you enjoy gore otherwise. Then there's her mother-in-law, who's kind of morbid and not in the sexy Morticia Addams way. But she does say stuff about marriage sewing two people together as its powerful merging of souls, which is romantic, maybe? If you like soulmates, I guess? If you remember Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, you'll know what I mean. He's an angry dude most of the time. Nikki's brother is married to his ex-girlfriend, which is probably even weirder than everything else because why would you do that? It's a lot of family drama that's still worth putting up with if you're from a humble background around getting married to a rich significant other because nothing can be more horrifying than menial means in the 2026 economy. An impending death and the aforementioned family curse aside, there's a dialogue on what makes people soulmates and how your family can influence your love life. What stands out about the show is how its pacing and momentum makes it very unsettling, because the premise is very simple, right? So you need a particular execution for the horror to really be horror, and the show does that pretty well. The only thing that messes up is the classic Game of Thrones Season 8 problem. It's too dark. You need to turn the lights off. The Bondsman, 2025. Grenier David's The Bondsman is an action horror revolving around a bounty hunter named Hub. The action is because he's a bounty hunter. The horror is because this man has returned from the dead, which means, once again, this is a show with gore. And thanks to that, we get to see blown out windpipes and nearly headless bodies. And there's the familiar face with Kevin Bacon as Hub Holleran. Protagonist Hub used to be a regular bounty hunter. However, he gets killed by hitmen hired by the new boyfriend of his ex-wife, as he doesn't want to share her. So he wants Hub out of the picture. But it wasn't Hub's time to go, because the devil's minions were in Georgia, and someone has to send them back to hell. So Hub is resurrected with a new job to add to his CV, and in his new role, he is tasked with rounding up these demons and sending them back home. But these are not demons who are roaming around the town as demons. They're skinwalkers pretending to be regular people, and in some cases, even the pastor at the church. But because Hub is a resurrected man, he can see right through them. Midge is the rep of the company, and is the one who runs Hub through the program. Turns out his mother Kitty had the same job at some point. Hub can avoid hell if he keeps sending demons, allowing him to live on Earth. But if he misses, straight to hellfire. The bondsman is unfortunately bonded to this awful fate. Even his mother is confused as to why her son has been eternally damned. Every episode is Hub sending a demon back, bringing us to visuals of faces peeling off, levitation, because that's what demons do, water burning people because holy water burns demons, and people just exploding randomly. Very standard biblical stuff. And this means there's a catch to Hub's job, which goes beyond catch this demon and send it back just because we miss our demons in hell. Then there's Hub's long-lost career in country music with his ex-wife Marianne, as they still have the videos and would love to return to the good old days, explaining why Marianne's current boyfriend Lucky wanted Hub out and still has it out for him following the latter's resurrection. I don't want to tell you everything, but I do want to say that while the acting's not the best, it's not bad. The soundtrack comes through, the episodes are short, the plot is easy, and if you squint, there are also references to the 7 deadly sins with the characters representing each of the sins. Hysteria, 2024. Some eerie Modern Family deja vu takes place in this American comedy horror thriller by Matthew Scott Kane. He's done American Horror Story, so I was intrigued in checking out how he would handle Hysteria. The premise is high school centric. We have a struggling metal band from the school and their outcasts. Coming back to my point on Modern Family, Julie Bowen plays Linda Campbell, and we know her better as Claire Dunphy, but it's the actors for Geordie Stanwyck and Faith Whitehead, namely Chiara Aurelia and Nikki Hahn, who look eerily similar to Alex and Haley Dunphy, which seems intentional since Julie Bowen is already in the cast. Geordie, Dylan, and Spud are part of the aforementioned heavy metal band known as Death Crunch, and they begin to ride this new wave of their town suddenly growing an interest in the occult. So they rebrand themselves a satanic band for clout, knowing fully well the intrigue for the occult is not positive. Needless to say, the ensuing events, such as a series of murders and supernatural activities, lead to a witch hunt, which leads to the band getting caught in the crossfire, pun intended. Now, the quarterback's parents had gotten a pentagram drawn on their garage door following their son's kidnapping, which is how all the occult stuff took off. He was eventually killed for a satanic ritual, so the town people have legit reasons to freak out. And Dylan's genius decision to adopt a satanic approach for the band, while effective, was never meant to work out positive, except for the part where he gets his crush's attention. My favorite thing about the show is how 80s it feels. There's a small town that's living in its own world. There's a sheriff who tries to keep things in order while investigating a supernatural problem. Very Stranger Things. There's also a hyper-religious, super Catholic woman, Tracy Whitehead, who obviously hates everything that's going on, but decides to bank on this moment to start her cultural war. Tracy's maniacal character literally goes around claiming that Death Crunch is responsible for opening a portal that will lead the devil to Happy Hollow. There are other strange elements, such as Linda Campbell's mysterious rashes, as she feels like she's being whipped around by unseen forces, so she kind of starts to descend into madness. this. But Tracy is the standout character because while religious maniacs can often be the most difficult to deal with, people often really get there because of valid reasons, which is the case for Tracy, who goes on to pass those problems down to her daughter Faith. I love the music in the show. I love Julie Bowen's performance, and I love how it's horror, but there's comedy. But the comedy does not take away from the horror, but it does cushion the tension when necessary. Marianne, 2019. Another more worldly entry into my list, Marianne is a French horror series by Samuel Bowden, centered around a young novelist named Emma. If a creator is really proud of their work, it would make sense for them to experience the Pygmalion effect. But the coming of life to characters from your horror novel is destined not to translate well. But that's what happens with Emma. About Emma, she witnessed her childhood friend hang herself in front of her back in the day, and this began to haunt Emma in her nightmares. But that was 15 years ago, or so she thought until the nightmares returned, prompting the successful novelist to return to her hometown of Eldon in the countryside of France. She wants answers for all this, but the town is laced with powerful witchcraft, and all this tracks back to the novels written by Emma. The face of Emma's horror novels is a witch called Marianne. She is the wife to the demon Belith, and a very evil spirit, often countered by Lizzie Lyric. A decade-long series, Emma ends it by killing Lizzie off. What she doesn't know is that her character is not so fictional after all, and Marianne is unhappy about losing the spotlight now that the series is over. So she summons Emma back to Eldon so that the novelist can be forced to keep writing her Marianne-centric novels while the witch can keep her audience. Marianne's existence is parasitic, as she needs to hop from host to host, and who she truly is a real shock. You'll find it out in the finale, and I don't want to spoil it. Out of all the host bodies, however, Madame d'Aguillon stands out as the creepiest. It's the way she's been presented, especially facially, and the performance of the actress, Herbstmeyer, that does the talking. The bulging eyes and the odd smile are uncanny. Coming back to Emma's childhood friend who committed suicide, Madame d'Aguillon happens to be her mother. So when Emma sees her, she approaches as her friend's mother, while trying to put out how creepy she is with the crow and the smile devoid of anything human at the back of her mind. Anything that looks human without having humanity does very well in horror. Think Pure Titans in Attack on Titan. Marianne aces this with Madame d'Aguillon, and makes it worse when she pees while sitting across from Emma and her scared beyond wits friend Camille, after which she forces Camille to feel it while excitedly calling herself filthy. Later, she body hops to her next victim, leaving the original Madame d'Aguillon without her eyesight as Marianne takes it, leading us to the original poster of a woman with bandaged eyes. When the dust settles, all you remember is the face of Marianne as Madame d'Aguillon, which is essential for a horror to leave its mark. Think Chucky, Annabelle, Pennywise. They all have the face, and they all have those eyes. Red Rose, 2023. I don't know if I've been able to establish this yet, but I really do enjoy European television series. And the United Kingdom might not be part of the EU anymore, but it's definitely still Europe. And very few people in the world do a TV series as good as the Brits. Which brings me to Red Rose by Michael and Paul Clarkson. With Michael Clarkson having been the man behind The Haunting of Bly Manor, the show brings us to a town in England's Greater Manchester. There's a group of friends from very working class backgrounds, freshly graduated from school, looking forward to a great summer before they head out for university. They're obsessed with their smartphones, just like any other teen. So things get really bad when Rochelle downloads the ominous and sinister app known as Red Rose, just like many other teens in Bolton did, and it makes demands of her. Failure to do so will result in consequences. Red Rose pretends to be of help to her and tasks her with things like kissing Noah at the party, but things escalate to the app threatening her with exposing her humble background as someone who lines up at the food bank for stamps. It even taunts her with visuals of her dead mother. If you remember the blue whale fiasco in 2016, that would be a really good comparison, as it tasked teens with fatal tasks that often led to deaths. Naturally, Red Rose is not devoid of deaths either. Some are suicides, some are not. But the deaths have one thing in common, and that is Red Rose. But it's not an app you can ignore, because it does help, as seen with Rochelle's account getting credited with £100 after she loses her electricity due to not having money to pay for the meter. The show is very evidently a dialogue on capitalism, as it shows us just how far people are willing to go when their basic needs are not met. And with how powerful the digital world is over the people, an app is the best way to manipulate someone into doing extreme things. More so because no one is more mentally malleable than a teenager preparing to go off to college, and technology controls their whole lives at this point, and it knows everything about us. Fantastic soundtrack, by the way. Channel Zero, 2016. The mid-2010s were a time when creepypasta was a popular thing, and Nick and Tosca banked on it by creating Channel Zero. The show is an anthology series that adapts popular creepypastas, which is how we end up with this shot. Season 1, Candle Cove, explores the return of a child psychologist to his hometown of Iron Hill, Ohio, where his brother, alongside many other kids, had mysteriously died 28 years ago. Meanwhile, a pirate-themed puppet show known as Candle Cove exclusively aired in Iron Hill alone during those days. Except there seemed to be a weird coincidence with the end of the disappearances and the show ceasing to air. Season 2, No End House, follows a young woman visiting a house of horrors with her friend, which soon proves to be more than just a tourist attraction. Season 3, Butcher's Block, is more sinister, with the central character having a schizophrenic sister, made worse by the two sisters moving to a city that has a track record for odd disappearances. And the final season, The Dream Door, witnesses newly married couple Jillian and Tom having their marriage put to the test when a secret door in their basement begins to reveal their darkest secrets, threatening not just their marriage, but also their lives. Each season has a separate director, which is what keeps it interesting and fresh. The episodes are terrifying, often ending on a cliffhanger, and each season caps at a 6-episode mark. Because so much of horror often explores folklore or the ills of technology when it comes to more contemporary horror, creepypastas are interesting because these are urban legends spread across the internet. Overall, Channel Zero has great reviews, and it seems as if there is a unanimous agreement among many, myself included, on No End House being the best season. It's weird how adapting creepypastas may not have been that common because it's so good. I used to be obsessed back in the day. This is what makes me love Channel Zero, to be honest, which is, for some odd reason, not that popular, even though it should be. Archive 81, 2022. And finally, we have the supernatural horror of Archive 81, developed by Rebecca Sonnenschein and produced by her, James Wan, and Paul Harris Boardman. I am sure you recognize one of those names here. James Wan just happens to have been the creator of a very niche Conjuring Universe, and also a co-creator in Saw and Insidious. I guess that alone vouches for Archive 81. The show is based on a podcast of the same name. There's Dan, a conservator, who gets hired by the mysterious company LMG to restore an H18 tape. The tapes were created by Melody Pendress, a documentary filmmaker who researched into an apartment named Visit, its mysterious residents, and the disappearance of people led to her discovering a secret, dangerous cult, which is something Dan finds out eventually. At first, he restores the introductory video, leading him to being hired by LMG to restore every other tape. There's a lot of religious horror here, with the involvement of a cult. There's also the odd part where Dan's parents died in a fire when he was young, and that Visor too got burnt down in a fire. I mean, the two can coexist, but it's odd because Virgil, the guy from LMG who hires Dan, somehow knew Dan's father died while wanting Dan to restore the footage of a building that was burnt down. Over the course of restoring the archives, Dan grows obsessed with what happened to Visor, and more importantly, with Melody. Dan grows obsessive with the work and experiences a newfound desire to save Melody from what happened 25 years ago. The story takes place across two timelines, one in Dan's present and the other in Melody's past, and I do love this kind of storytelling, more so than a direct flashback such as Interview with a Vampire. This allows for a connection between Dan and Melody, and secrets are revealed that directly impact what Dan knows about his life and his family. There's a little bit of fantasy in Archive 81, owing to its usage of Lovecraftian horror. The style is very noir, which works well with the documentary. The show has a lot of genres, to be fair, but it's all blended very well. They never feel like it has come out of nowhere. All in all, a great watch, and no two episodes feel the same. I wouldn't say everything is super unpredictable, because at this point, most of us have consumed enough media to become great at the probability game, which is why I want to sell the atmosphere of the shows. Slow pacing, while a drag in certain genres is always a buff in horror, provided the payoffs are there. And they are there, so you can get on with the program and what I'm vouching for. And if you don't like it, you can punch me. Absolutely don't do that. With that, this video comes to an end. I hope you enjoyed it. Do share your thoughts with us about whether you watch these shows or not. And until then, we'll see ya!